He was born beneath the endless Mongolian sky, a child of the steppe with nothing but his name and the cold wind at his back. Yet within a lifetime, he would become master of the largest contiguous empire the world has ever known. He united feuding clans with sheer will, reshaped the world through blood and brilliance, and carved his legend into the earth like tracks in snow. But beyond the fearsome image of Genghis Khan lies a deeper story, a tale of survival, vision, loyalty, and loss. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's somewhat comforting to imagine all of us, scattered across the globe, quietly unwinding together. So, breathe deeply, settle in, and allow the mysteries of time and space to cradle your imagination. For in the quiet hours of the night, under the same stars watched by our ancestors, the secrets of long-lost civilizations await, patiently, quietly, like ancient stars still shining from light years away. Let's begin. The wind sweeps low across the Mongolian plains, soft as a whisper, curling over the hills and through the tall grasses that dance in the morning light. The earth here feels endless, stretching beneath a sky so wide it seems to hold the world in its arms. This is a land of silence and space, where time moves with the seasons and the people move with the herds. In the hush before daybreak, a child is born beneath the open sky. No palace, no fanfare, only the quiet rhythm of hoofbeats in the distance and the crackle of a fire. His name is Temüjin. It is the year 1162, or so tradition tells us. Genghis Khan is born, but for now he is known as Temüjin and is born to the Brotherhood clan, one of many nomadic tribes who roam these vast lands. His father, Yasuge, is a tribal chieftain, respected but not powerful. His mother, Horlun, was once taken from another tribe, but her spirit remains unbroken. From her, Temüjin will inherit more than strength. He will learn endurance, clarity, and the quiet pride of those who survive when others turn away. His early life is not one of comfort. The Mongol steppe offers no shelter from the elements, and no mercy to the weak. Winters bite with icy teeth. Summers blaze across the land. Food is hunted, not harvested. Power is taken, not given. Loyalty is fleeting, and betrayal often rides behind a smile. Children are taught to ride almost as soon as they can walk. They learn to shoot from horseback, to read the signs in the wind, to sleep with one eye open. For Temüjin, this world is not harsh, it is simply home. When Temüjin is 9 years old, his life begins to change. His father arranges a future marriage to Berta, a girl from a nearby tribe. Temüjin is sent to live with her family to strengthen the alliance. But while he is away, tragedy strikes. Yasuge is poisoned by rivals, members of the Tatars, whom he had once helped defeat. Word travels fast across the steppe, carried by messengers and whispers on the wind. Temüjin, it's called home. But home no longer exists. With Yasuge dead, the Brotherhood clan sees no reason to remain loyal to his widow and her children. The family is cast out, abandoned to the wilderness without herds, followers, or protection. Temüjin, barely 10 years old, becomes the man of the family. With his mother and younger siblings, he survives by digging roots from the frozen ground, hunting rats and birds, and enduring long winters in makeshift shelters. It is hunger that becomes his teacher now. Hunger for food, yes, but also for justice, for dignity, for something more. He begins to see the world differently. Strength alone is not enough. Fear may win battles, but it cannot hold people together. Temüjin learns to listen. He watches how his mother commands respect through calm words and decisive action. He sees that trust is a currency as valuable as silver. and he begins to understand that unity, real unity, cannot be forced, it must be built. As he grows, tensions arise within his own family. His half-brother Bekta begins asserting dominance, hoarding what little food they have. One day, Temüjin confronts him. A bow is drawn. A fatal arrow flies. The act is brutal but decisive. It marks the first time Temüjin takes control of his destiny, and the first time he tastes the price of leadership. In the years that follow, Temüjin wanders the uncertain margins of Mongol life. He forms alliances carefully, binds friendships through ritual, and begins to attract followers, not because of his birth, but because of his resolve. He meets Jamukha, a boy of noble descent, who becomes his blood brother, or Anda. They swear eternal loyalty, dreaming of a future where Mongol tribes are no longer divided, no longer weak. For a time, their bond is unbreakable, but the steppe is always shifting. Power flows like water between the fingers. Temüjin is captured by the Taichi-ud, a rival clan, and held prisoner. They bind him with wooden stocks, hoping to crush his spirit. But he escapes with the help of a single kind soul, an act of mercy he will never forget. From that moment, Temüjin becomes something else, not just a survivor, but a symbol. He repays loyalty with loyalty. He remembers every kindness, every betrayal, and carries them with him like stones in a pouch. By the time he reaches his late teens, he is no longer just a son without a father. He is a man with a vision, forged not in courts or scrolls, but in the raw silence of the steppe. His following is small, but fierce. His beliefs are radical. He sees a world where merit matters more than birth, where tribes unite not under fear, but under shared purpose. The seeds of empire lie dormant still, but already they stir beneath the frost. As the sun sets over the open plain, the sky turns the color of cooled embers. The horses settle. The fire crackles low. Somewhere near the camp, Temüjin walks alone, the stars reflected in his eyes. His journey has only begun, yet already he carries the weight of the world upon his shoulders, lightly, patiently, as though he knows that everything he has endured was not a curse, but a calling. Let your breath fall in rhythm with the wind, slow and steady. The plains are wide, the night is quiet, and the story of the boy who would be Genghis Khan has only just begun. The sun rises slowly over the steppe, gilding the grasslands in gold. In the cool of the morning, the breath of horses steams into the crisp air. Smoke drifts from cooking fires, and the hum of waking voices blends gently with the breeze. The world feels ancient and alive. Out here, life is both simple and fragile, shaped by the loyalty of friends, the envy of rivals, and the quiet shifting of fate. Among the tents and riders, two boys become men together, bound not by blood, but by oath. One is Temüjin, the other, Jamukha. They met when they were young, both sons of chieftains, both curious, ambitious, and drawn to one another by some invisible thread. In the traditions of their people, they became Andas, sworn brothers. This bond was sacred, stronger than mere friendship, deeper than alliance. It meant loyalty without question, the sharing of burdens, the promise of standing together even in the face of death. For a time, the bond held true. The two rode together across the open lands, hunted and feasted side by side, and dreamed of a Mongol nation united in strength. But even as they laughed and plotted futures beneath the stars, shadows formed at the edges. Jamukha, born of a noble lineage, saw the world through the lens of tradition. Temüjin, scarred by abandonment and betrayal, imagined something different, something new. While Jamukha leaned on heritage and the old ways, Temüjin built his influence by breaking with custom. He gathered warriors not just from noble clans, but from the outcasts, the overlooked, the loyal. He promoted men by merit, not blood. He rewarded bravery, discipline, and service, regardless of birth. For those long denied a place at the table, Temüjin offered a new future. And as his vision grew, so too did his following. But success often breeds suspicion. To the traditional tribal leaders, Temüjin's growing power was unsettling. His reforms were dangerous. His egalitarian ideas undermined centuries of custom. And so, many of the aristocratic clans rallied behind Jamukha, who promised to uphold the old order. The bond between the two Andas began to fray, not with rage, but with inevitability. In 1186, Temüjin declared himself Khan of the Mongols, a bold act, unprecedented, and to some, outrageous. Jamukha responded by declaring war. Friends became foes. The land between them, once shared in peace, now echoed with the hoofbeats of war horses. Their first great confrontation came a year later. At the Battle of Dalan Baljut, Temüjin's forces were outnumbered and outmatched. Jamukha's army was larger, bolstered by powerful clans still loyal to tradition. The battle was fierce, a whirlwind of arrows, dust, and blood. Though Temüjin's men fought with courage, they were ultimately defeated. In the aftermath, Jamukha made a terrible choice. He executed over 70 of Temüjin's captured commanders, not by sword, but by boiling them alive. It was a message of dominance, a brutal reminder of who still held the reins of power. But the cruelty backfired. Whispers of discontent spread. Even among his supporters, the savagery left a bitter taste. Temüjin, meanwhile, retreated not into despair, but into silence, gathering strength, learning, preparing. Over the next decade, Temüjin rebuilt his army, brick by invisible brick. He deepened his alliances, drew in new clans, and refined his system of organization. His army became a disciplined machine, structured in units of 10, 100, 1,000. He enforced loyalty through laws, nurtured unity through vision, and rewarded competence above all else. Slowly, the tide began to shift. In 1201, Jamukha once again rose to challenge him, supported by a coalition of tribal chiefs. But Temüjin was ready. His forces, smaller but more cohesive, met Jamukha's in battle, and this time, victory belonged to the reformer. Jamukha was captured. Many expected him to be executed in kind. But Temüjin did not seek vengeance. He respected the bond they had once shared, the past they could not forget. In an act of mercy, he released Jamukha. Yet peace would not hold. Jamukha continued to resist, unable to accept a new Mongol order shaped by his former brother. In time, he was captured again, this time by his own men, who handed him over to Temüjin. Offered his life, Jamukha refused to serve. He asked instead for an honorable death. Temüjin, with sorrow and respect, granted it. Their story, one of friendship and rivalry, of loyalty tested and lost, became legend. It was more than a political struggle. It was a reflection of the steppe itself, open, wild, unforgiving. A place where dreams rose and fell with the wind, and where even the deepest bonds could be undone by the call of power and change. As the day fades and the sky softens to lavender, you can almost hear the distant gallop of horses echoing across time. Two boys, now legends, once rode here, laughing, planning, dreaming beneath the stars. One would fall, one would rise, but both would shape the destiny of the world. Now the fires burn low, and the tents glow softly from within. Let your mind rest in this quiet place, between friendship and fate, where history turned on the strength of a promise once made beneath the open sky. A stillness settles over the plains in the first light of morning. The grass shimmers with dew, and flocks of birds rise slowly into the pale blue sky, their wings barely making a sound. All around, the land feels at peace, though beneath that quiet lies the weight of transformation. Across these hills, once scattered with divided clans, a new unity is beginning to take shape. In the center of it all stands Temüjin, no longer just a survivor or a warrior, but a leader with a vision stitched from loyalty, order, and the whisper of destiny. Following the fall of Jamukha, Temüjin's influence spread like the wind, quiet at first, but growing stronger with each step. The tribes of the steppe, long fractured by rivalry and blood feud, began to look toward him not just as a military leader, but as a bringer of something rare, stability. Where once there had been only temporary alliances, Temüjin offered something firmer, structure, fairness, and a chance to rise not through bloodline, but through merit. He welcomed warriors from defeated tribes and gave them a place within his ranks. He made no distinction between noble and commoner, slave and free man, as long as they were loyal and capable. This was radical. In a society that had long respected ancestry above all, Temüjin's model was both refreshing and dangerous, but it worked. Men who had once fought against him now rode beside him, bound by discipline and the promise of reward. Temüjin reorganized Mongol society into a new system. He broke up tribal loyalties and restructured them into military units: Arban, 10, Jagun, 100, Mingan, 1,000, and Tumen, 10,000. Each unit was mixed deliberately from different tribes, forcing unity and dissolving old grudges. Loyalty now flowed upward, not to a clan chief, but to the Khan. This structure created a sense of shared identity far stronger than any blood tie. He established a personal guard, the Keshik, drawn from the most loyal and trusted men in his service. These warriors lived alongside him, ate at his table, and acted as both protectors and advisors. It was not simply a gesture of status, it was a message. Those closest to Temüjin earned their place, and the Khan himself was never above his people. He also introduced a new legal code, known as the Yasa. Though its exact words were never fully recorded, its principles were clear. It demanded honesty, banned theft, encouraged religious tolerance, and upheld discipline within the ranks. Those who broke the code were punished without exception. Whether you were a noble or a herder, the law applied equally. It brought a kind of justice the steppe had never truly known. Temüjin also valued communication. He established messengers across his growing realm, swift riders who could carry news across hundreds of miles. Later, these would become the foundation for the Yam, the Mongol postal relay system. Even in these early days, he understood that information was power and that a ruler must always be informed to lead well. And through all this, he never lost touch with the people. He wore no golden robes. He lived in a djur like everyone else. He ate the same meals, drank the same fermented mare's milk, slept under the same stars. This humility, this shared life, made his authority feel honest. He did not ask men to follow him into battle while he sat behind. He rode at the front. By the early years of the 13th century, the transformation was nearly complete. Clan by clan, the great tribes of the Mongolian plateau submitted, not just to Temüjin's might, but to his model of order. The powerful Taichi Ud, the Ongirat, the Uru Ud, all once independent, now bent the knee. What had once been a land of warring chiefs had become, under his guidance, a single nation. In the year 1206, a great Kurultai, a council of tribal leaders, was called on the banks of the Onon River. Chiefs, generals, elders, and spiritual guides gathered beneath the vast Mongolian sky. There, amid solemn ceremony and ancestral rites, Temüjin was declared Genghis Khan, universal ruler. It was not just a title, it was the birth of an empire. The moment passed without marble columns or carved thrones. There were no banners sewn with gold, only the whisper of the wind through the grass and the watchful gaze of the steppe. Yet in that quiet, something profound occurred. The unification of the Mongol people under a single rule, with a single purpose. From this point on, Genghis Khan no longer belonged only to the Borjigin clan. He belonged to the world. He had become the living symbol of unity carved from division, of discipline forged from chaos. As the sun sinks below the horizon and the Onon River reflects the final glint of fading light, you can almost see the gathered tribe still there, warriors and elders, sons and fathers, sitting around fires, listening to the crackle of flame, and dreaming of a future no one had dared to imagine. Their Khan stands nearby, his silhouette calm and steady, already thinking ahead. Tonight, the tribes sleep as one people, and the world beyond the steppe stirs in its slumber, unaware that history has just turned its page. The sky above the steppe turns silver in the quiet dawn, the grass damp with dew, and the air filled with the soft rustling of waking herds. The world feels vast and hushed, as if pausing for breath before something great begins. Fires crackle low in the early morning mist, and across the rolling hills, banners stir gently in the wind. Genghis Khan, no longer merely a chieftain, stands at the helm of a united Mongol people, and now his eyes turn outward, toward the east, where empires rise behind high walls and great cities glitter like jewels under the sun. There, beyond the mountains and forests, lay the powerful Jin Dynasty of northern China. The Jin had ruled for nearly a century, controlling fertile river valleys and great walled cities filled with scholars, merchants, and armies. They viewed the steppe peoples as dangerous and uncivilized, useful as trade partners or temporary allies, but never equals. Yet, what the Jin did not yet understand was that the tribes had changed. The Mongols were no longer scattered raiders. They were one people, united under a leader who had tamed the chaos of the plains and turned it into a focused storm. In 1211, Genghis Khan launched his first full campaign against the Jin. He didn't march recklessly into unfamiliar lands. Instead, he moved with precision, dividing his forces into coordinated columns, each with specific routes and targets. His intelligence network had already mapped the terrain. He knew where the rivers flowed, where the roads twisted, and where fear would bloom first. The Mongol army moved like wind across the open country, fast, quiet, relentless. They bypassed strongholds to strike at vulnerable towns, captured supply lines, and sowed confusion wherever they went. Cities that resisted were surrounded, starved, and eventually overwhelmed. Those that surrendered were often spared, their people left to live under Mongol protection. It was not just a military campaign, it was a message: resist and be destroyed, submit and survive. One of the earliest great conquests was the fortress city of Datong. Tall walls and confident defenders were no match for the Mongols' mastery of siege warfare. Though born on open plains, Genghis Khan had adapted. He brought engineers from conquered peoples who built trebuchets and siege towers, dug tunnels beneath walls, and hurled fire and stone into enemy strongholds. When the city fell, its loss sent ripples of dread across the Jin frontier. In 1213, Genghis Khan's forces reached the outer defenses of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. It was one of the richest and most important cities in all of China, guarded by massive walls and elite troops. The siege was long and brutal. The Mongols cut off all access, capturing surrounding towns and forcing the capital into isolation. Hunger spread inside the walls. panic followed. At one point, the Jin Emperor, desperate to end the siege, sent envoys bearing gold, silk, and promises of tribute. Genghis Khan accepted for a time, but as soon as the Jin faltered in their payment, the Mongols returned, laying waste to what remained. By 1215, Zhongdu had fallen. The great city, once filled with music and lanterns, was reduced to flame and silence. And yet, for all the fire and fury, Genghis Khan did not revel in destruction. His campaign was not driven by bloodlust, but by strategy. He spared those who could be useful, scribes, artisans, translators, and sent them back to Mongolia to enrich his court. He allowed farmers to return to their fields, merchants to reopen their stalls. His empire was growing, and it needed more than warriors. It needed roads, laws, knowledge, and the hum of life to fill the spaces where battle had passed. He left behind military governors in the conquered territories and demanded order from them. Taxes were fair, predictable, and collected efficiently. Religious shrines were left untouched. Local customs were often preserved. Genghis Khan did not want to erase these lands. He wanted to fold them into something larger, something lasting. This first great conquest taught the world that the Mongols were not simply a terror from the plains. They were organized, adaptable, and governed by discipline. Genghis Khan had transformed his people into more than a confederation of tribes. They were now the vanguard of an empire that would reshape the face of Asia. As night returns to the steppe and the stars blink gently to life, the fires of Mongol camps glow once more beneath the open sky. Far from home, among unfamiliar rivers and foreign soil, Genghis Khan sits before a quiet flame, his eyes reflecting the orange light. He is not finished. The Jin have been broken, but the world is vast, and its corners still untamed. Let the shadows lengthen now, let the wind soften. For beyond these conquered lands, a new path beckons, one that stretches westward toward deserts, silk, and the distant promise of revenge. The desert wakes slowly, as if reluctant to rise. First, a faint glow on the horizon. Then, the warm blush of sunlight spreading across endless dunes, casting long shadows that ripple with the sand. There is no sound here but the hush of the wind and the occasional call of a lone bird in flight. Yet beneath this stillness, something begins to stir. Hoofbeats faint and distant, carried across the plains like the whisper of an approaching storm. It is the year 1218, and Genghis Khan, now master of the East, turns his gaze westward toward lands he has not yet touched. Beyond the great mountains and dry steppes lay the Khwarazmian Empire, a realm of cultured cities, merchant wealth, and deep pride. Stretching from the edges of Persia to the Silk Road oases of Central Asia, it was a land of libraries, marketplaces, and domed mosques gleaming in the sun. The Shah, Ala ad-Din Muhammad, ruled over this territory with confidence. He had never known fear of the steppe. To him, the Mongols were a distant threat, foreign and wild. Genghis Khan did not initially come with war in mind. He sent envoys first, a gesture of peace, bearing gifts and seeking trade. A caravan arrived in the Khwarazmian city of Otrar, loaded with fine textiles and exotic goods. But instead of being welcomed, the merchants were seized. Their cargo was stolen, and their lives were ended by the local governor. When word reached the Shah, rather than issuing an apology, he approved the act. Genghis Khan responded with calm fury. He sent a second diplomatic party, demanding justice. One of the envoys was executed, the others were humiliated and returned. With those acts, the sacred code of hospitality and diplomacy was broken, and in Genghis Khan's world, such a betrayal could not be forgiven. In the spring of 1219, he set out with his army, not for conquest, but for retribution. The Mongol host crossed rivers and deserts with methodical grace, striking with the same speed and precision that had crushed the Jin. City after city fell. Otrar, where the massacre began, was besieged and destroyed. The governor who had ordered the deaths of the merchants was captured and executed. Legend says molten silver was poured into his eyes and mouth, though Genghis Khan rarely wasted cruelty unless it served a lesson. Bukhara came next, a city of scholars and gold-domed mosques. The Mongols surrounded it and breached its walls with siege engines and strategy. When the people surrendered, Genghis Khan addressed them in the great mosque. "I am the punishment of God," he said calmly. "If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." Samarkand, the crown jewel of the Silk Road, followed. Its defenders included tens of thousands of elite soldiers, but discipline had decayed under the Shah's erratic leadership. The Mongols outwitted them, dismantling their forces with clever feints and feigned retreats. When the city fell, the slaughter was swift and devastating. The Mongols took what they needed: horses, engineers, gold, and left the rest to smolder. Each conquest sent ripples through the empire. The Shah, stunned by the rapid collapse of his cities, fled from fortress to fortress, abandoning his people in search of safety. He left behind generals, family, governors, none of whom could stop what had begun. The Mongols pursued him all the way to an island in the Caspian Sea, where he finally died alone, broken and forgotten. But still, the campaign continued. In Nishapur, a revolt erupted after a Mongol officer, Genghis Khan's own son-in-law, was killed. The response was overwhelming. The city was razed, its population nearly wiped out in a wave of vengeance that served as a grim warning to any who dared resist again. Yet even in this fury, Genghis Khan maintained order. His armies moved like flowing water, governed by strict discipline. No looting without permission, no unnecessary cruelty. Engineers, scholars, doctors, and artists were spared and sent eastward. The empire was not merely expanding, it was collecting, absorbing, evolving. By 1221, the Khwarazmian Empire had ceased to exist. In just 2 years, Genghis Khan had dismantled a kingdom that had taken generations to build, and he did so not only with the sword, but with clarity of purpose. Betrayal had been met with punishment. Order had replaced chaos. Still, he was not done. In the west, he sent generals like Subutai and Jebe on reconnaissance missions, long campaigns through the Caucasus and into the lands of the Rus. These were not full invasions, but tests of the world's defenses, trials of terrain and temperament. Wherever they rode, the message was the same. The Mongol Empire had no borders, only direction. As night falls once more across the sands, you can almost feel the heat of a distant fire fading into ash. The stars above glimmer coldly, watching as silence returns to lands where cities once stood. And somewhere far from here, Genghis Khan rides beneath the moon, not triumphant, but contemplative. The Khwarazmian campaign was more than a war. It was a statement. That promises mattered. That betrayal bore consequence. That the horsemen of the East now ruled a realm that touched oceans, deserts, mountains, and the hearts of men who had once thought themselves safe behind their walls. Now let the winds settle. Let your breathing slow. The storm has passed, for now, and in its wake lies the foundation of something vaster than ever before. The morning sky is pale and quiet, painted in soft strokes of pearl and rose. Smoke rises gently from campfires, curling into the still air like threads of thought. Across the steppe, the tents of the Mongol people stand in tidy circles, their leather flaps stirring in the breeze. Horses graze nearby, their movement slow and content. There is no sound of war here, no clashing steel or cries of battle. Only the hum of a world at peace, held together by something stronger than fear, by order, discipline, and the will of a man who has not only conquered the world, but now seeks to shape it. Genghis Khan, born Temüjin of the Borjigin clan, had risen from obscurity to empire. Victory on the battlefield was only the beginning. Now he faced a greater challenge: to govern, to take the swirling chaos of war, the shattered pieces of fallen kingdoms, and forge from them something whole, something lasting. He began with law. The Yasa, his code, was not written down in a single document, yet its influence was everywhere. Passed by word of mouth and memorized by his officers, it touched all aspects of Mongol life. It was simple, strict, and fair. Theft, treason, and disobedience were punished without exception. But so too were false accusations and corruption. The poor were protected. Religious freedom was guaranteed. Women were afforded rights rare in many parts of the world. The laws were not built for the elite. They were built to bind everyone under the same sky, under the same rule. Next came organization. Genghis Khan's empire was vast, stretching from the Pacific shores of China to the dry lands of Persia. To hold it together, he divided it not by ethnicity or old loyalties, but by function. The military remained the backbone of administration. Civil and military life were intertwined. Each group of 10, 100, 1,000 had responsibilities beyond war, managing towns, collecting taxes, and maintaining order. Officers were chosen for their ability, not their bloodline. He established the Yam, a network of relay stations and mounted couriers that connected his empire like a living artery. Every 20 to 30 miles, a station offered fresh horses, food, and lodging. Messages that once took months could now cross continents in a matter of weeks. The system allowed him to command armies from afar, receive reports, send orders, and know his empire's pulse at all times. Trade was encouraged, not taxed into silence. Caravans moved safely under Mongol protection, from China to the Mediterranean. He standardized weights and measures, stabilized currencies, and offered incentives for merchants. Silk, porcelain, spices, furs, glassware, and manuscripts flowed freely. Alongside goods came ideas. Medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy passed between cultures in ways not seen before. He welcomed all religions. Though the Mongols themselves followed the shamanistic beliefs of their ancestors, Genghis Khan believed the divine took many forms. He exempted monks, priests, and imams from taxation. He sought wisdom from all corners and allowed scholars of every faith to serve as advisors. Churches, mosques, and temples stood side by side beneath Mongol rule, protected not by tolerance alone, but by law. His empire was also a place of refuge for the talented. Artisans from Persia, engineers from China, doctors from India, all were brought to his court, not as slaves, but as contributors to a civilization that valued skill over origin. Even his enemies, once conquered, were often put to use. He spared engineers and scientists, scribes and craftsmen. The empire became a tapestry, stitched together from 100 threads, all contributing to the same design. Despite his growing power, Genghis Khan remained humble in his habits. He refused to build a grand palace. He lived in a jair, just like his soldiers. He ate simple meals. He wore the same practical clothes on campaign and in court. He moved with the seasons, following the rhythms of the steppe. This simplicity was not just personal, it was strategic. It reminded his followers that their Khan was still one of them, a ruler who walked among his people. But peace was not without its dangers. In the shadows, old rivalries stirred, rebellions flared in distant cities, corruption whispered through newly appointed governors. Genghis Khan responded with swift justice. He replaced those who abused power, reinforced his laws, and reminded his generals that strength meant service, not entitlement. He also began to consider the future. His sons were growing, each ambitious in his own way. To prevent internal strife, he divided the empire among them as appanages, territories to govern, but left the supreme authority of the Khan to be passed by counsel, not by blood alone. He knew the danger of dynasties grown soft in luxury. He wanted his legacy to endure, not crumble under its own weight. As the sun reaches its zenith and the steppe hums with life, Genghis Khan stands among his people, not as a warlord, but as a lawgiver, an organizer, a father of nations. His empire is still young, but its foundation is firm, not in gold or marble, but in movement, in memory, in the clarity of laws spoken by firelight. And now, as dusk settles once more, and the horses return to their tethers, the land grows quiet again. The tent of the Khan glows from within, lit by a single flame. There, amid maps and messages, he plans his next steps, not with haste, but with purpose. Let the wind carry your thoughts gently now, as they drift across this boundless empire. For in the hush that follows thunder, in the silence that cradles power, the true strength of a ruler is revealed, not in how he conquers, but in how he holds what he has built. The mountains rise like stone sentinels in the distance, their snowy crowns glowing in the amber light of dawn. Valleys below lie quiet, veiled in mist, where rivers coil like silver threads through the earth. Beyond these peaks, beyond the deserts and unfamiliar forests, lies a world unknown to the Mongols. And yet, under the watchful eye of Genghis Khan, that world is about to awaken to hoofbeats it has never heard, and a name that will be whispered in fear across distant lands. It is the early 1220s, and the Mongol Empire now spans from the Pacific to the heart of Central Asia. The Jin Dynasty lies fractured, the Khwarazmian Empire reduced to ash, and the cities of the Silk Road bear new banners above their gates. But Genghis Khan is not content to let his borders harden. He seeks knowledge, intelligence, and understanding of what lies beyond. For him, the edge of the world is never the end. It is simply the next place to ride. He sends two of his most trusted generals, Subutai and Jebe, on a long-range reconnaissance mission. Their task is not conquest, but exploration. They are to follow the trail of fleeing Khwarazmian princes, to test the strength of kingdoms to the west, and to learn the shape of the land beyond the Caucasus Mountains. What unfolds is one of the most extraordinary military journeys in history. The two generals lead a force of around 20,000 warriors, small by Mongol standards, yet powerful, agile, and devastatingly efficient. They move across Persia and into the Caucasus, crossing treacherous passes and facing unfamiliar foes. In Georgia, they face the united forces of Christian kingdoms, defeating them with swiftness and strategy. Then, they pass into the steppes north of the Black Sea, where the Kipchaks and Alans, nomadic tribes with deep roots in the region, form coalitions to resist them. But resistance is scattered. The Mongols defeat one alliance, then another, each time using deception, speed, and overwhelming mobility. The local tribes, fearing what is coming, seek aid from a more distant power, the principalities of Kievan Rus. These Slavic states are fragmented but strong, and they rally an army of over 80,000 men to face the Mongol threat. At the Kalka River in 1223, the two forces meet. What follows is a lesson in precision and patience. Subutai and Jebe feign retreat, drawing the massive coalition across miles of open steppe. The Allied army, overconfident, breaks formation to pursue what they believe is a fleeing enemy. Days pass, the Mongols pull them deeper into exhaustion. And then, when the Rus and their allies are stretched thin and disorganized, the trap is sprung. The Mongols turn and strike like lightning. The Allied army is overwhelmed, broken into pieces and scattered. Many are slain, others are captured. It is a victory not just of force, but of intellect, a battle won through timing, understanding, and discipline. The message is clear. Even far from home, even against vastly superior numbers, the Mongol war machine is a force without equal. But Genghis Khan had not sent them west to conquer, at least not yet. After their victory, the generals do not remain. They gather maps, information, and prisoners. They note the weaknesses of the Rus, the structure of their alliances, the lay of the land. Then they turn back, vanishing as swiftly as they came. In the east, Genghis Khan receives their reports with great interest. He learns of the rich lands beyond the Volga, the cities of stone, the people unfamiliar with steppe warfare. He marks these findings carefully, not for immediate conquest, but for future planning. Always, he thinks in arcs wider than a lifetime. This Western campaign is not only about geography, it is about perception. The Mongols have revealed themselves to Europe, not as barbarians, but as an organized, unstoppable force. And Europe, for the first time, begins to feel the tremble of a distant threat. And yet, while the world recoils, Genghis Khan remains calm. He has no need to boast. He simply continues to move, to build, to prepare. In the east, he strengthens his grip. In the heartlands, he revises his laws. And in the west, he now knows what awaits. As twilight returns to the steppe, and the western wind carries scents of pine and snow, you can imagine the fires glowing in distant camps. A horse snorts softly. A scout returns with news. Genghis Khan, seated beside his maps, listens with quiet attention. His empire has touched the edge of Europe. The world is now smaller, and the stars above, those same stars once watched from a child's cold shelter, shine down upon a man who now holds the fate of continents in his hands. Let your thoughts drift now across the hills and rivers, past the lands of the Rus, and into the fields of sleep. For tonight we rest beside the scouts and messengers, under the wide and endless sky of the Khan. Evening settles softly on the Mongolian plains, casting long, golden shadows over the grass. The sky glows with fading light, and the air carries the cool hush of oncoming night. Around scattered camps, fires flicker and voices fall quiet. There is peace here, for a moment, like the stillness that comes at the end of a long day. And far beyond these fields, where the mountains meet the stars, the last chapter of a great life quietly unfolds. It is the year 1226. Genghis Khan is now in his mid-60s, older than most men of the steppe ever lived to be. He has conquered empires, united warring nations, and built a realm that stretches from ocean to ocean. And yet, his journey is not finished. In the western corner of China lies the Kingdom of Western Xia, a dynasty that once pledged allegiance to the Mongols, but now stands defiant, believing that the Khan has grown weary and distant. But Genghis Khan does not forget, and he does not forgive betrayal. Despite his age, he rides once more to war. The campaign against the Western Xia is not grand in scale compared to the vast wars of the past, but it is precise, personal. The Mongol army, now a finely honed instrument, moves with its usual efficiency. Cities are surrounded, rivers are crossed, walls are breached. The Western Xia forces, brave and determined, resist as best they can, but they are outmatched. The journey is not without difficulty. The terrain is rough, and the resistance fierce. But the Mongol machine is relentless. Genghis Khan moves with his troops, as always. He does not sit in luxury while others fight. He rides through mountain passes, sleeps in his tent beneath the stars, and guides his generals with the same sharp clarity that has never dulled. But time, even for legends, does not stand still. Accounts vary. Some say he fell from his horse. Others whisper he was wounded in battle. There are tales of illness, of slow decline, of pain hidden behind the stillness of his eyes. What is certain is that sometime in 1227, during the closing days of the Western Xia campaign, Genghis Khan died. The news was kept secret, at first to prevent unrest, to ensure the campaign could continue unshaken. His body was returned quietly to Mongolia, carried across the steppes he had once wandered as a hungry child. According to legend, those who accompanied the procession were sworn to silence. Forests were cleared, rivers diverted, and tracks erased. Some say that soldiers who buried him were then killed to preserve the secret. Others believe 1,000 horses trampled the ground until no trace remained. Where he lies, no one knows. He left no grand tomb, no towering monument. Only the wind knows his resting place. And perhaps that is fitting, for Genghis Khan never needed stone to mark his greatness. His legacy was written in roads and laws, in trade routes and languages, in the lives of millions reshaped by his vision. Before his death, he gave instructions for the continuation of his empire. His son Ogedai would succeed him as Great Khan, and his descendants would go on to conquer vast new lands, from the heart of Europe to the shores of Southeast Asia. But even they would look back to this moment, to the man who had begun it all. As night deepens over the steppe, and the stars shine like silent watchmen above the plains, you can almost hear the soft rhythm of hoofbeats fading into the distance. The journey is over now, the fires burn low, and in the hush of a world he changed forever, the man who was once Temüjin slips quietly into legend. Let your breath slow with the darkening sky. For though the rider is gone, his shadow still stretches across the earth, and in the quiet soil of Mongolia, somewhere beneath grass and stone, he sleeps, wrapped not in gold, but in the silence he so often cherished. The dawn after a legend's passing is always quiet. The sky opens pale and still over the steppe, as if the land itself is remembering. The air is crisp, the earth damp with dew, and the horses stand motionless, listening. Though Genghis Khan is gone, the rhythm of the empire he built continues, steady and strong. The fires of his camps may be ash now, but across Asia and beyond, his legacy has only just begun to unfold. In the year following his death, his empire did not crumble, it expanded. Before his final campaign, Genghis Khan had carefully arranged for succession. His third son, Ogedai, was chosen as his heir, not because of seniority, but because of his steadiness and capability. The decision had been agreed upon by council, avoiding the bloodshed that so often follows the death of a powerful ruler. Ogedai was not as fierce as his father, nor as commanding, but he was thoughtful, generous, and deeply committed to the unity of the empire. Under Ogedai's rule, the Mongol Empire surged westward once more. The conquest of the Jin Dynasty was completed. Cities in Persia were absorbed into Mongol control. And then, under the leadership of Subutai and Batu, grandsons and trusted generals, the Mongols swept into Eastern Europe. They crossed the Volga, defeated the Rus, laid waste to Hungary and Poland, and stood at the edge of Vienna. Their speed and coordination stunned Europe. No army had ever moved like them, like smoke across the fields, like thunder without warning. But just as they approached the heart of Europe, news reached them of Ogedei's death. By tradition, all Mongol princes were required to return to Mongolia to elect a new great Khan. The invasion was halted. Europe, spared not by strength but by custom, would not forget the terror that came and left like a passing storm. Meanwhile, in the east, Kublai Khan, another grandson of Genghis, began to carve out a different legacy. Fascinated by Chinese culture, he adopted many of its customs and eventually declared himself Emperor of China, founding the Yuan Dynasty. Under his rule, the Mongol Empire reached its cultural peak. Trade, science, medicine, and philosophy flowed across borders. The Silk Road thrived, and for the first time in history, a single empire connected the Pacific to the Mediterranean. But not all was unity. The vast empire, too large to be ruled by one hand, slowly fractured into four major khanates: the Yuan Dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in Russia. Each ruled independently but shared roots in the house of Genghis. For a time, these khanates cooperated, sending envoys, sharing intelligence, and preserving the structures built by their common ancestor. In time, these kingdoms would rise and fall. Internal conflict, changing trade routes, new powers, and rebellion chipped away at their strength. Yet the foundations laid by Genghis Khan, his systems of communication, his legal code, his embrace of merit and tolerance, left echoes that can still be felt today. Cities like Samarkand and Beijing grew rich on the bridges he built. The very idea of international trade flourished in the lanes his armies had cleared. Even in the West, his legacy lingered. The fear he inspired gave way to fascination. European kings sought alliances with the Mongols against mutual enemies. Maps were redrawn, borders shifted, and in time, historians, travelers, and scholars began to reassess the man once known only as a barbarian. He had done more than conquer. He had connected. In a world fractured by distance, language, and suspicion, he had shown that order could rise from chaos, that empires could stretch beyond what was thought possible, and that leadership could come not from noble birth, but from vision, resilience, and will. As the sun rises higher over the plains, casting warm light on the grass and warming the air, it is easy to forget the violence that forged this empire. And yet, it is impossible to ignore the shape it gave to history. Genghis Khan's legacy is not simple. It is not gentle, but it is profound. He gave the world a new map. He gave the Mongol people a shared identity, and he gave future generations a story not only of war, but of transformation. Now, as birds rise in soft spirals into the sky, and the wind carries the scent of distant lands, we begin to understand that the man who once slept beneath this same sky has never truly left. His empire may have broken into pieces, but the threads he wove still run through time, quiet, enduring, and woven into the fabric of our world. The wind returns to the steppe, soft and steady, brushing through the tall grasses as though it remembers every footfall that once passed this way. The sky above is endless and blue, just as it was centuries ago. Time has moved forward, but the land remains much the same, open, unbounded, and steeped in memory. Here, beneath the shifting clouds and beneath the soil, lies the story of a man who was both feared and followed, who rose from hunger and exile to shape the world in ways no one could have foreseen. Genghis Khan's name still stirs the imagination. To some, it echoes with conquest and cruelty, the thunder of hooves, and the ruin of cities. To others, it speaks of brilliance, of strategy, of vision, of a mind that saw patterns in the chaos and brought order from fragmentation. But above all, His story reminds us of how history is shaped not only by kings in castles or scribes with pens, but by those born in the margins, forged in hardship, and driven by something deeper than ambition. He was a man of contradictions, a warrior who prized discipline and law, a destroyer who valued artisans, knowledge, and exchange. He tore down empires, but he also built systems that would outlive him. He rode at the head of an army that reshaped the map, yet he ruled from a tent, ate simple food, and slept on the ground beneath the stars. The empire he built did not endure in name, but its impact has never truly faded. Trade routes that once trembled with fear now thrived in his shadow. Cultures connected by conquest later bloomed. With shared ideas, art, and understanding, his messengers galloped across continents, carrying not only orders, but also trust, that a law existed which even the powerful could not break. Even now, scholars continue to debate his legacy. Was he a brute or a genius, a tyrant or a unifier? The truth, like the wind, shifts depending on where you stand. But perhaps the deeper lesson of Genghis Khan is that greatness is rarely simple, that those who leave the deepest marks on the world are not carved in black or white, but in all the shades in between. And in the quiet hours of night, as you rest beneath your own sky, it is humbling to think that Genghis Khan once looked upon the same stars. He saw them from the back of a horse, from the door of a felt tent, and from the edge of battlefields scattered across a vast and beautiful world. In those moments of stillness between storms, perhaps he too wondered about his place in the great river of time. Now, the steppe is still again, the hooves are gone, the campfires are cold, and yet the wind continues to whisper his name, not loudly, not as thunder, but softly, like a story told by someone who remembers. A tale passed down through generations, across borders and belief, until it becomes part of something greater than any one man. So, let your eyes grow heavy, and your thoughts drift gently. Let them follow the winds across the hills and rivers, through ancient cities and quiet forests, across deserts and mountains, and back again to the open plains of Mongolia. There, where it all began, beneath the watchful sky, the legacy of Genghis Khan rides on, not in conquest, but in memory. If you're still awake, I hope you've enjoyed this journey through time. Please consider liking and subscribing so you don't miss our next gentle voyage into history. Feel free to let me know in the comments where you'd like to drift off to next. Wherever you are, thank you for listening. And until next time, sleep well.